The champagne glass shattered against marble, crystal fragments scattering like diamonds across the floor of the penthouse. Hyuk-jin didn't flinch at the sound. He'd heard worse, done worse, but something made him pause mid-conversation with his associates. Through the open doorway he caught a glimpse of movement. The new maid, the black woman with careful eyes and quiet dignity, bending to sweep up broken glass in the hallway. She reached for a larger shard, and her body seized. Just for a second. A barely perceptible flinch, a tightening around her mouth, a tremor in her hand before she forced herself to continue. Most wouldn't have noticed. Most wouldn't have cared. Hyuk-jin noticed everything. It was how he'd survived in his world for 35 years. But this flash of suppressed pain in a stranger's face shouldn't have mattered to him at all. It shouldn't have made him excuse himself from million-dollar negotiations to follow her down that hallway. It shouldn't have made him wonder what had put that careful control in every movement she made, or why she wore long sleeves in summer heat. But it did. Delilah Morgan had perfected the art of invisibility over 28 years of life. She moved through Hyuk-jin's massive Tribeca penthouse like a shadow, present but unnoticed, essential but ignored. It was exactly how she preferred things, especially now. The marble floors gleamed under her careful attention, each surface reflecting her deep mahogany face for a split second before she moved on. Her natural hair was pulled back in a tight bun, the tight coils carefully smoothed down, practical and professional. The long-sleeved black uniform covered her completely despite the August heat outside, hiding what needed to stay hidden. Delilah. Mr. Hyuk wants the West Wing cleaned before his evening meeting, Jian announced, her crisp accent cutting through the quiet morning. The head housekeeper's expression remained neutral, but there was kindness in her eyes. Are you feeling well? You look pale. I'm fine, Jian, thank you. The lie came easily. Delilah had been lying about being fine for 3 weeks now, ever since Austin had... She cut off the thought, focusing instead on the weight of the cleaning supplies in her hands. The pain in her ribs was manageable. She'd had worse. At least this job paid well enough to keep Cameron in his new school, to keep them in their small apartment in Washington Heights, to keep them away from Austin. Good. Mr. Hyuk is particular about his space. Jian's voice softened. But if you need anything... I'm fine, Delilah repeated, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She wasn't fine. The bruises hidden beneath her uniform throbbed with each breath, a reminder of her ex-boyfriend's rage when she'd finally told him it was over. But she was alive. She was working, and Cameron was safe with Autumn while she cleaned penthouses for people who lived in a different universe than her own. The West Wing was Hyuk-jin's private domain. Delilah had only been working at the estate for 2 weeks, and she'd seen the owner exactly 3 times, each encounter lasting less than 30 seconds. He was exactly what she'd expected from the rumors whispered among the staff. Cold, intimidating, and apparently connected to business ventures that no one discussed openly. The man lived in shadows and moved through the world like he owned it, which, considering the size of this penthouse, he probably did own several pieces of it. Delilah began in his study, a space of dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan's skyline. Everything was precisely arranged. Books in Korean and English, paperwork she carefully avoided reading, and a single framed photograph of an older couple she assumed were his parents. She was dusting the bookshelves when she heard voices approaching. Male voices, speaking rapid Korean. She recognized Hyuk-jin's deep tone immediately, followed by another man's higher-pitched responses. They entered the study without noticing her. Delilah kept her head down, continuing her work as quietly as possible, trying to blend into the furniture. Victor Kane is making moves in Queens, the second man said, switching to English. He thinks you've gone soft. Hyuk-jin's laugh was dark and humorless. Let him think that. It makes what comes next easier. Should we... The second man stopped abruptly. There's someone here. Delilah's hand stilled on the bookshelf. She could feel their attention shift to her, heavy as a physical weight. She turned slowly, keeping her eyes respectfully lowered, and found herself facing Hyuk-jin directly for the first time. He was taller than she'd thought, with sharp features and dark eyes that seemed to catalogue everything about her in a single glance. His black hair was styled perfectly, and he wore a white dress shirt with the top 4 buttons undone, revealing a muscular chest and a glimpse of a delicate vertical Korean script tattoo on the side of his neck. Power radiated from him like heat from asphalt in summer. My apologies, Mr. Hyuk. I'll finish later. She moved to gather her supplies and her ribs screamed in protest. The pain was so sudden and sharp that she couldn't quite hide the flinch, couldn't quite suppress the small intake of breath. She froze, waiting for dismissal or irritation. What she got instead was silence. Heavy, assessing silence. When she finally dared to look up, Hyuk-jin was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. His jaw had tightened almost imperceptibly, and something dangerous had flickered in his dark eyes. "You're the new maid," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir." "Delilah Morgan." She straightened despite the pain, meeting his gaze for a brief moment before looking away again. Years of her father's teachings echoed in her mind. Never show weakness. Never let them see you break. "How long have you been working here?" 2 weeks, sir." "And you're injured?" Still not a question. Somehow he'd seen what she'd been hiding from everyone else. "I'm fine, sir. Just a minor accident. It won't affect my work." The other man in the room, younger, sharper-featured, also Korean, exchanged a glance with Hyuk-jin. Something unspoken passed between them. "Wonbin, give us a moment," Hyuk-jin said quietly. Wonbin hesitated, then nodded and left the study, closing the door behind him with a soft click. Delilah's heart rate kicked up. She was alone with one of the most powerful men in New York's underworld, and he'd just noticed she was hurt. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear, to protect herself. But she needed this job. She needed it desperately. "Look at me, Miss Morgan." She did, slowly raising her eyes to his. Up close, she could see the faint scar along his jawline, the intensity in his gaze that suggested he missed nothing and forgot even less. "Who hurt you?" His voice was soft, almost gentle, but there was steel underneath, a promise of violence barely restrained. "No one, sir." "I told you it was an accident. Don't lie to me." He took a step closer and she fought the urge to back away. "I've seen enough injuries to know the difference between an accident and someone's fists. Who hurt you?" The concern in his voice was unexpected. Wrong somehow. Men like him didn't care about women like her. They didn't notice when someone flinched in pain or wore long sleeves in summer. They certainly didn't ask questions with that edge of protective fury in their tone. "It's handled, Mr. Hayuk. He's not a problem anymore." "He?" Another step closer. "Your boyfriend?" "Ex-boyfriend. And I've left him. That's why I needed this job." The words came out before she could stop them, raw and honest. "I needed to get away, needed to support my son, needed to start over. Please don't fire me. I know I shouldn't have brought my problems to work, but I promise it won't happen again." "Fire you?" He looked genuinely confused for a moment. Then something like anger flashed across his face. Not at her, she realized. For her. "Ms. Morgan, I have no intention of firing you, but I need you to be honest with me. Are you safe? Is your son safe?" The question cracked something open in her chest. When was the last time anyone had asked if she was safe? When was the last time someone had cared? "Yes," she whispered. "We're safe now. Austin doesn't know where we live." Hyuk-jin nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Dr. Min-kyung will be here tomorrow at 9 a.m. You'll see her." "Sir, I can't afford—" "You can, because it's free. Dr. Min-kyung works for me, and I take care of my staff." His tone left no room for argument. "If those ribs are broken, you need proper treatment. And if anyone comes looking for you here, you tell security immediately, understood?" Delilah could only stare at him, stunned into silence by this unexpected kindness from a man whose world was built on violence and power. "Understood, Miss Morgan." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." He studied her for another long moment, something shifting in his expression. "What's your son's name?" "Cameron. He's 8. And who's watching him while you work?" "My best friend, Autumn. She lives in our building." Hyuk-jin nodded once, decisively. "Good. You'll leave at 5 today instead of 7. Go home to your son." He moved toward his desk, effectively dismissing her, but paused. "And Miss Morgan, you're safe here. In my house, under my protection. That means something." She believed him. God help her, she believed him. As Delilah gathered her supplies with shaking hands and left the study, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had just shifted. She'd come to this penthouse looking for invisibility, and found instead a man who saw everything, including the wounds she'd tried so hard to hide. Dr. Min-kyung arrived exactly at 9 a.m. the next morning, professional and efficient. She examined Delilah in one of the guest bedrooms, gentle hands probing carefully at her ribcage, while asking quiet questions about pain levels and breathing difficulty. 2 cracked ribs, Dr. Min-kyung confirmed, her expression sympathetic. Not broken, thankfully, but you need rest and proper pain management. I'm prescribing medication and wrapping your ribs. No heavy lifting for at least 4 weeks. 4 weeks? Delilah's stomach dropped. But I can't. My job has been adjusted, came a voice from the doorway. Both women turned to find Hyuk Jin leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest. Today he wore black slacks and another white dress shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. The delicate Korean script on his neck caught the morning light. "Mr. Hyuk, I didn't know you were there," Dr. Min Kyung said smoothly, closing her medical bag. "I wanted to hear the diagnosis myself." His dark eyes fixed on Delilah. 4 weeks of light duty. Ji-in has already been informed. "Sir, I can work. You can rest." His tone was firm but not unkind. Light duty means supervising supplies, organizing storage, paperwork. Nothing that requires bending or lifting. "You'll receive your full salary." Delilah felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She couldn't remember the last time someone had taken care of her like this, protected her like this. "Thank you," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to repay." "You repay me by healing properly and continuing to do your job well." He straightened from the doorway. "Dr. Min Kyung will check on you weekly. If you experience any worsening symptoms, you tell Ji-in immediately." He started to leave, then paused. "And Ms. Morgan, I increased security protocols at the building. If your ex-boyfriend shows up, he won't get past the lobby." He was gone before she could respond, leaving her alone with Dr. Min Kyung, who watched the empty doorway with knowing eyes. "He's protective of his staff," the doctor said carefully, "but I've never seen him quite this attentive." Delilah didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. But something warm had bloomed in her chest, something dangerous that felt suspiciously like hope. Over the next 2 weeks, Delilah discovered that Hyuk Jin's version of light duty meant working almost exclusively in areas where he happened to be. When she organized files in the study, he was there reviewing documents. When she inventoried the wine cellar, he came down to select bottles for dinner. When she folded linens in the laundry room, he appeared asking Ji-in questions that could have been answered anywhere else. He never spoke to her directly beyond brief, professional exchanges, but he was always there. A silent presence she felt like heat on her skin. It was during her 3rd week while she was cataloguing books in his private library that Cameron changed everything. Autumn had a family emergency, and Delilah had no choice but to bring her son to work. Ji-in, bless her, had understood immediately and set Cameron up in the staff lounge with coloring books and snacks. But 8-year-old boys were curious creatures, and Cameron had apparently slipped away to explore. Delilah found him in the library, staring up at Hyuk Jin with wide, fearless eyes. Her heart stopped. "Cameron, I'm so sorry, Mr. Hyuk. Is this your office?" Cameron interrupted, undaunted. "It's really big. My mom says you're her boss." "Are you rich?" "Cameron." Delilah moved forward quickly despite the twinge in her ribs, mortification flooding through her. "That's not appropriate." "It's fine." Hyuk Jin's voice held a trace of amusement. He crouched down to Cameron's level, bringing himself eye to eye with the boy. "Yes, this is my office, and yes, I suppose I am rich. What's your name?" "Cameron Morgan. I'm 8 3/4. My mom works for you, and she says you're a good boss because you helped her when she was hurt." Cameron's expression turned serious, far too serious for a child. "Thank you for taking care of my mom. I tried to, but I'm not big enough yet." Something cracked in Hyuk Jin's carefully controlled expression. Delilah saw it, a flash of pain, of recognition, of something raw and vulnerable before he locked it down again. "You're a good son, Cameron," he said quietly. "Your mother is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her." Cameron tilted his head, studying Hyuk Jin with the same fearless curiosity. "You have a tattoo. What does it say?" "Cameron, that's enough questions," Delilah interjected, finally finding her voice. "Mr. Hyuk is busy." "It's a name," Hyuk Jin said, ignoring her protest. His hand moved unconsciously to touch the Korean script on his neck. "Someone important to me." "Like family?" "Like family." Cameron nodded solemnly, as if Hyuk Jin had revealed some great truth. "Family is important. My mom says that's why we had to leave my dad, because family means protecting each other, not hurting." The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Hyuk Jin's entire body went rigid, his jaw clenching so tight Delilah could see the muscle jump. When he spoke, his voice was carefully, dangerously controlled. "Your father hurt you." "He wasn't really my dad," Cameron said matter-of-factly. "Just Mom's boyfriend. My real dad died when I was little. I don't remember him, but Mom says he was a good man. Hyuk-jin's eyes found Delilah's over Cameron's head, and what she saw there made her breath catch. Rage. Pure, cold, lethal rage, barely restrained. But underneath it, something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. "Cameron, sweetheart, we need to get back to the staff lounge," Delilah said gently, moving to take her son's hand. "Mr. Hyuk-has work. Does he like video games?" Cameron looked up at Hyuk-jin hopefully. "I'm really good at them. Maybe we could play sometime?" "Cameron, I don't play video games," Hyuk-jin said, and Delilah's heart sank at the inevitable rejection. But then he continued, "But I have a chess set in my study. Do you know how to play chess?" Cameron's face lit up. "My grandpa was teaching me before he died, but I'm not very good yet." "Then perhaps I could teach you." Hyuk-jin straightened, and the dangerous edge had softened slightly. "If your mother approves." Both males turned to look at Delilah expectantly. She felt completely out of her depth, standing in a billionaire's library while he offered to teach her son chess. This wasn't how her life was supposed to go. Men like Hyuk-jin didn't befriend the children of their housekeepers. But Cameron was looking at her with such hope, and Hyuk-jin was watching her with an expression that suggested he understood exactly what this moment meant, that her son was desperate for positive male attention, for someone to step into the void Austin's abuse and her father's death had left. "If it's not too much trouble, Mr. Hyuk," she heard herself say. "No trouble." His eyes held hers for a moment longer, something unspoken passing between them. "Tomorrow, 4 p.m. in the study. But only if you finish your homework first, Cameron." "I will, I promise." Cameron was practically bouncing with excitement. As Delilah led her son back to the staff lounge, her mind whirled with questions and worries. She was letting Hyuk-jin, a man whose business dealings were shrouded in danger, into her son's life, into their lives. But when she glanced back, she found him still standing in the library doorway, watching them walk away. The expression on his face was complex, longing, protectiveness, and something that looked almost like pain. He caught her looking and nodded once, a silent promise she didn't yet understand. She was starting to realize that Hyuk-jin was far more complicated than she'd imagined, and far more dangerous to her carefully guarded heart. The chess lessons became a regular occurrence. 3 times a week, Cameron would sit across from Hyuk-jin in the study, his small face scrunched in concentration as he studied the board. Hyuk-jin was a patient teacher, explaining strategies in simple terms, praising Cameron's good moves, and gently correcting mistakes. Delilah was usually working nearby, ostensibly organizing files or dusting shelves, but really watching this unexpected friendship develop between her son and the intimidating man who ran a criminal empire. "Checkmate," Cameron announced triumphantly one afternoon, then immediately deflated. "Wait, no, that's not checkmate, is it?" "Not yet," Hyuk-jin said, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. "But it was a good attempt. You're thinking 3 moves ahead now, that's progress. When will I be good enough to beat you? When you stop telegraphing your intentions with your face." Hyuk-jin reached across the board and gently tapped Cameron's forehead. "Chess is about reading your opponent. Right now you show me every thought you have. How do I stop doing that? Practice, control, learning to hide what you're feeling." Hyuk-jin's expression darkened slightly. "Though I hope you never need that skill anywhere but on a chessboard, Cameron." Cameron was quiet for a moment, then asked with devastating simplicity, "Is that why you're so good at it? Because you had to hide your feelings a lot?" The question hung in the air. Delilah stopped pretending to work and turned to look at Hyuk-jin fully. She saw his hands tighten on the edge of the chessboard, saw the muscle in his jaw flex. "Yes," he finally said, his voice rough. "That's exactly why. Because of your job. Because of many things." Hyuk-jin stood abruptly, moving to the window that overlooked Manhattan. His broad shoulders were tense under the white dress shirt, the Korean script on his neck visible as he tilted his head back. "Sometimes life requires us to be strong when we feel weak, to show power when we feel vulnerable, to protect others even when we can barely protect ourselves." Cameron nodded seriously, as if Hyuk-jin were discussing homework instead of the emotional armor required to survive a dangerous life. "Like my mom, she's always strong even when she's hurt, even when she's scared." Hyuk-jin turned back, his dark eyes finding Delilah's across the room. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "Your mother is the strongest person I know, Cameron, and the bravest. Because she left Austin? Because she protected you. There's no greater strength than that." Delilah felt tears burn behind her eyes. She turned away quickly, busying herself with unnecessary straightening, but she could feel Hyuk-jin's attention still on her. "Mr. Hyuk?" Cameron's voice was small now, uncertain. Do you think Austin will find us?" The temperature in the room dropped again. Delilah spun around, her heart in her throat, to find Hyuk-jin already moving back to the chess table. He crouched beside Cameron's chair, bringing himself to the boy's eye level, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle but absolutely certain. "No, Cameron. He won't find you, I promise you that. But how can you be sure? Because I protect what's mine, and you and your mother are under my protection now. Do you understand what that means?" Cameron shook his head, wide-eyed. "It means you're safe. It means no one will hurt either of you, not while I'm here." Hyuk-jin's hand rested briefly on Cameron's shoulder, a gesture of comfort and promise. "I give you my word." "Like a promise? Cross your heart and hope to die?" A ghost of a smile crossed Hyuk-jin's face. "Exactly like that, cross my heart." Cameron threw his arms around Hyuk-jin's neck in an impulsive hug. Delilah saw Hyuk-jin freeze, saw the shock ripple across his features, before his arms slowly came up to return the embrace. When he met Delilah's eyes over Cameron's shoulder, the raw vulnerability in his expression nearly broke her. This dangerous man, this crime boss who commanded fear and respect, looked absolutely undone by an 8-year-old's trust. When Cameron finally pulled back, he was grinning. "Can we finish our game now? I think I know how to beat you this time." "Show me," Hyuk-jin said, his voice slightly rough. As they returned to the chessboard, Delilah realized with crystal clarity that something irreversible had happened. Hyuk-jin had stopped being just her employer. He'd become something more, a protector, a friend, and perhaps most terrifyingly, someone she was starting to care about deeply, someone she was starting to trust with the most precious thing in her world, her son. And judging by the way Hyuk-jin's eyes kept finding hers across the room, soft and possessive and full of promises, he knew it too. It happened on a Thursday evening. Delilah was gathering her things from the staff lounge, preparing to head home, when Won-bin appeared in the doorway with an expression that made her blood run cold. "Miss Morgan, Mr. Hyuk needs to see you in his office. Now." The walk through the penthouse felt like a death march. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had she done something wrong? Was she being fired? Had something happened to Cameron? Hyuk-jin was standing at his desk when she entered, his back to her, shoulders rigid with tension. The skyline beyond the windows was painted in sunset colors, but the beauty felt ominous somehow. "Close the door," he said without turning. She did, her hands trembling slightly. When he finally faced her, his expression was carefully blank, but fury radiated from him like heat waves. He held up his phone, screen facing her. "Do you know who this man is?" The security camera footage showed a man arguing with the lobby guards downstairs. Austin. Her ex-boyfriend looked rough, unshaven, wild-eyed, aggressive. She could see him shouting, gesturing violently, clearly trying to force his way past security. "That's Austin," she whispered, her stomach twisting with ice-cold fear. "He's been here for the past 30 minutes demanding to see you, claiming you stole from him, that you're keeping his son from him, that you belong to him." Hyuk-jin's voice was deadly calm, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the phone. "He threatened my security staff. He tried to force his way into my building." "I'm so sorry," Delilah started, panic rising in her chest. "I never thought he'd find me here. I'll leave right now. I'll resign." "You'll do no such thing." Hyuk-jin moved toward her with predatory grace, closing the distance between them in 3 strides. "Sit down, Delilah." It was the first time he'd used her first name. The sound of it in his deep voice made something flutter in her chest despite her fear. She sank into the chair facing his desk, her legs suddenly unreliable. Hyuk-jin leaned against the desk in front of her, arms crossed, studying her with those intense dark eyes. "Tell me everything, from the beginning. I need to understand what I'm dealing with." "What you're dealing with," she echoed. "This is my problem, not yours. The moment he showed up at my building threatening my staff and trying to get to someone under my protection, it became my problem." His jaw clenched. "Now tell me, how long were you with him?" The concern in his voice, the barely restrained protectiveness, broke something loose inside her. The whole story came pouring out. Meeting Austin 2 years after her husband's death, how charming he'd been at first, how gradually the charm had turned to control, then anger, then violence, how she'd hidden it from everyone, making excuses, believing his apologies, how the final incident 3 weeks ago had been the wake-up call she'd needed. "He put me in the hospital," she said quietly, her hand unconsciously moving to her ribs. Told the doctors I'd fallen down the stairs. They didn't believe him, but I was too scared to tell the truth. When I got out, I took Cameron and ran. Changed our phone numbers, moved to a new apartment, got this job through an agency that didn't require references he could trace. Hyuk-jin's expression had grown progressively darker throughout her story. Now he looked murderous. And Cameron? His voice was rough. Did he hurt Cameron? He never touched Cameron directly, but he'd hurt me in front of him, and that— Her voice broke. That was enough. My son shouldn't have to see his mother treated like that. Shouldn't have to learn that love looks like fear. No child should. Hyuk-jin stood abruptly, pacing to the window. When he spoke again, his voice was strained with barely controlled rage. I want to kill him. For what he did to you, for what he made Cameron witness. I want to end him and make sure he can never hurt anyone again. The confession should have terrified her. Instead, something warm and fierce bloomed in her chest. When was the last time someone had been angry on her behalf? When was the last time someone had wanted to protect her with such intensity? But I won't, Hyuk-jin continued, turning back to face her. Because that's not what you need from me right now. What you need is safety, security, the assurance that he can't touch you or Cameron ever again. How can you guarantee that? His smile was cold and dangerous. Because I'm very good at making problems disappear, Delilah, and Austin is about to become a problem that solves itself. I don't understand. You don't need to. All you need to know is that by tomorrow, Austin will understand very clearly that you are off limits, that if he comes near you or Cameron again, the consequences will be severe. He'll leave the city, and he won't come back. You can't— She stopped, realizing that he absolutely could. This was his world, his power. What are you going to do to him? Nothing permanent. Nothing that will come back to you. Hyuk-jin moved closer, crouching in front of her chair the way he'd done with Cameron, bringing them eye to eye. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Delilah searched his face, seeing the determination there, the protectiveness, and underneath it all something that looked almost like tenderness. This man barely knew her, had no reason to care about her problems, yet here he was offering to handle a situation that could be dangerous for him. Why? She asked softly. Why would you do this for me? Something shifted in his expression, vulnerability flashing across his features before he could lock it down. Because you're under my protection. Because Cameron looks at me like I'm someone worth looking up to, and I won't let him down by failing to keep his mother safe. He paused, his voice dropping lower. And because when I look at you, I see strength and courage that most of my so-called powerful associates don't possess. You deserve better than to live in fear. His hand moved as if to touch her face, then dropped back to his side. The almost touch felt more intimate than if he'd actually made contact. Okay, she whispered. I trust you. The relief in his eyes was palpable. He stood, offering his hand to help her up. When she took it, his fingers closed around hers with careful strength, warm and solid. Wonbin will drive you and Cameron home tonight. There will be security outside your building. You're not to worry about this anymore. Understood? Yes. Good. He still hadn't released her hand. And Delilah, if you ever feel unsafe, if anything seems wrong, you call me. Day or night. Promise me. He pulled a card from his pocket with his free hand, pressing it into her palm. His private number, she realized. Not the office line, but his personal cell. I promise. They stood there for a moment longer than necessary, hands still clasped, something electric passing between them. Then Cameron's voice echoed from down the hallway, calling for his mother, and the spell broke. Hyuk-jin released her hand slowly, his fingers trailing across her palm. Go to your son. Wonbin will handle everything else. As Delilah left his office, her hand still tingling from his touch, she felt the fear that had been her constant companion for weeks finally begin to ease. Hyuk-jin had promised to keep them safe, and somehow she knew he would keep that promise, no matter what it cost him. The next morning, Delilah arrived at work to find the penthouse buzzing with an undercurrent of tension. Staff members moved through their duties with quick efficiency, casting nervous glances toward Hyuk-jin's private wing. Ji-in pulled her aside in the hallway. Mr. Hyuk was out late last night, came back around 3 a.m. Wonbin says it's handled, whatever it is. The head housekeeper's knowing eyes studied Delilah's face. This wouldn't have anything to do with the man who tried to force his way in yesterday, would it? I don't know what you mean, Delilah said carefully. Ji-in didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Mr. Hyuk wants to see you in his study at 10. Don't be late. When Delilah entered the study at the appointed time, she found Hyuk-jin standing at his window, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. His white dress shirt was wrinkled, the sleeves rolled up, and there was a darkness under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept. But he turned to her with a small smile, and there was satisfaction in his expression. "It's done," he said simply. "What's done?" "Austin signed a legal document this morning relinquishing any claim to you or Cameron. He also signed a restraining order that will be enforced by both legal authorities and other interested parties. He's been offered a construction job in Seattle that pays well enough to make relocating attractive. He'll be gone by the end of the week." Delilah's knees went weak. "How did you—" "It's better if you don't know the details. But I can tell you that he was very motivated to accept my offer. Sometimes people need to be reminded that their actions have consequences." Hyuk-jin's expression hardened for a moment, then softened as he looked at her. "You're safe now, Delilah. Truly safe. He won't bother you again." She should have been disturbed by the implications of what he'd done, should have asked more questions about how he'd convinced Austin to agree to all of this overnight, but all she felt was overwhelming relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face before she could stop them. "Thank you so much. Don't cry." He crossed the room in 2 strides, his hands coming up to gently cup her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. "You're safe, that's all that matters." She looked up at him through her tears, seeing the tenderness in his eyes, the careful way he held her, as if she were something precious. This dangerous man, this crime lord, was treating her with more gentleness than anyone had in years. "Why are you being so good to me?" The question escaped before she could stop it. His thumb traced along her cheekbone, his touch feather-light. "Because you deserve good things, Delilah. Because Cameron deserves to see his mother treated with respect and care. Because—" He stopped, something vulnerable flickering across his features. "Because?" she prompted softly. "Because I'm starting to care about you both far more than I should." The confession seemed pulled from somewhere deep inside him, and that's dangerous. For all of us. Why dangerous? Because people in my world don't get to keep the things they care about. They get taken away, used as leverage, hurt as punishment. His hands were still cradling her face, his gaze intense and pained. "I should push you away, should keep my distance, but I can't seem to do it." Delilah's heart was racing. She reached up, covering one of his hands with her own. "Then don't. Delilah, I've spent the last 2 years being afraid. Afraid of Austin. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of not being enough to protect my son. But with you, I'm not afraid." She held his gaze, letting him see the truth in her eyes. "Maybe that's dangerous. Maybe I'm being stupid. But I trust you, Hyuk-jin. And I think Cameron and I are safer with you than we've ever been." Something broke in his carefully controlled expression. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers, his eyes closing as if in pain or relief, or both. "You're going to ruin me," he murmured. "You and that brave boy of yours. Is that a bad thing? I don't know yet." He opened his eyes, and the intensity in his gaze stole her breath. "But I don't think I care anymore." They stood like that for a long moment, foreheads touching, sharing breath, balanced on the edge of something neither of them could name, but both of them felt pulling them together. Then Cameron's excited voice echoed from somewhere in the penthouse. Mom, where are you? Mr. Hayek said we could have our chess lesson early today." And they broke apart, both smiling despite the charged atmosphere. "He asked me this morning if we could play before his school day," Hyuk-jin explained, stepping back but keeping one hand on her waist, as if reluctant to fully break contact. "I hope that's all right." "More than all right." Delilah's smile was genuine, warm. "He talks about you constantly. You're his hero." "I'm no hero, Delilah. Maybe not, but you're his, and mine." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning, full of promise. Hyuk-jin's hand tightened on her waist briefly before releasing her. "I should go find him before he tears apart the library looking for the chess set," he said, his voice slightly rough. "Hyuk-jin?" She caught his arm as he turned to leave. "Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when I was trying to be invisible. For caring when you didn't have to. For keeping us safe." He looked down at her hand on his arm, then back up at her face, and the smile he gave her was genuine and unguarded, transforming his usually severe features into something almost boyish. "You were never invisible to me, Delilah. Not from the moment I saw you flinch in pain and try to hide it. You've been impossible to ignore ever since." With that, he left to find Cameron, leaving Delilah standing in his study with her heart racing and her mind reeling with the implications of everything that had just been said. She was falling for him, for this complicated, dangerous, protective man who played chess with her son and moved heaven and earth to keep them safe. And God help her, she thought he might be falling for her too. 3 weeks passed in a strange, beautiful bubble. Austin had indeed left for Seattle without incident, and the constant fear that had been Delilah's companion for months finally began to fade. She threw herself into her work, her ribs healing properly thanks to Dr. Min Kyung's care and Hyuk Jin's insistence on light duty. Cameron flourished under Hyuk Jin's attention. The chess lessons had expanded to include discussions of history, strategy, even some basic Korean phrases that Cameron delighted in trying to pronounce. Hyuk Jin was patient and kind, showing a side of himself that Delilah suspected few people ever got to see. And between Delilah and Hyuk Jin, something was growing. Stolen glances across rooms, brief touches that lingered longer than necessary, conversations that started professional and ended personal. He'd begun calling her by her first name regularly, and she no longer called him Mr. Hyuk when they were alone. It felt like the beginning of something wonderful, which is why she should have known it couldn't last. The first warning came on a Monday morning. Jian pulled Delilah aside with worry etched in her features. Mr. Hyuk received a message last night from Victor Kane. The head housekeeper's voice was barely a whisper. There's going to be trouble. The staff has been told to stay in the East Wing today. You should take Cameron home early. What kind of trouble? The dangerous kind. The kind that happens when powerful men have disagreements. Jian gripped her arm. Just go home, Delilah. Keep that boy safe. But before Delilah could gather her things, Wonbin appeared, his usually composed face tense with urgency. Ms. Morgan, Mr. Hyuk needs you in his office, now. And bring Cameron. Her blood turned to ice. What's wrong? Just come, quickly. She found Cameron in the staff lounge and practically dragged him through the penthouse, her heart pounding with dread. When they entered Hyuk Jin's office, she found him standing with 3 other men, all Korean, all dressed in dark suits, all radiating danger. But Hyuk Jin's attention went immediately to Cameron, and his expression softened despite the tension in the room. Cameron, I need you to go with Wonbin for a little while. He's going to take you somewhere very safe. Can you do that for me? But our chess lesson, we'll play later, I promise. Hyuk Jin crouched down, bringing himself eye level with the boy. Right now I need you to be very brave and do exactly what Wonbin tells you. Can you do that? Cameron looked between Hyuk Jin and his mother, fear creeping into his young face. Mom? What's happening? Everything's fine, baby. Delilah forced her voice to stay calm, even as panic screamed through her veins. Go with Wonbin. I'll be right behind you. You're lying. Cameron's voice trembled. You only call me baby when you're scared. Hyuk Jin's hands settled on Cameron's shoulders. Your mother and I need to have a grown-up conversation. When we're done, we'll come get you. But right now, the most important thing you can do is trust Wonbin to keep you safe. He's my most trusted friend, and he'll protect you with his life. Understand? Cameron nodded slowly, then surprised everyone by throwing his arms around Hyuk Jin's neck one more time. Be careful, the boy whispered. Please. Delilah saw Hyuk Jin's eyes close briefly, saw his arms tighten around Cameron. I will. Now go. Wonbin led Cameron from the room, and the moment the door closed, Hyuk Jin's entire demeanor changed. The gentle teacher disappeared, replaced by the cold, calculating crime lord. Victor Kane knows about you, he said without preamble, his eyes meeting Delilah's. And about Cameron. The room tilted. How? Someone in my organization has been feeding him information. I don't know who yet, but Kane now knows that you and Cameron matter to me, which makes you both targets. One of the other men spoke up in rapid Korean. Hyuk Jin responded in kind, his tone clipped and authoritative. The conversation went back and forth, heated and tense, until Hyuk Jin held up a hand for silence. I'm moving you and Cameron to a secure location, he told Delilah. Today. You'll have around-the-clock protection until I can neutralize this threat. For how long? However long it takes. His jaw clenched. Kane is using you as leverage. He wants me to back down from certain business territories. He thinks threatening someone I care about will make me weak. Then maybe you should just... No. The word was final, absolute. I don't back down, and I sure as hell don't let people threaten what's mine. I'm not yours. Aren't you? He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands framing her face. Tell me you don't feel this thing between us. Tell me you haven't been thinking about it every time we're in the same room. Tell me Cameron doesn't light up like Christmas morning every time I walk in. That's not the point. That's exactly the point. His forehead pressed against hers, his voice dropping to something rough and desperate. You and Cameron have become the most important things in my world, and Kane knows it. So now I have to make a choice. Let you go to keep you safe or hold on tight and fight for what I want. What do you want? She whispered. You. Both of you. In my life, in my home, in my future. I want chess lessons and burned dinners, and someone who sees past the monster I am to the man I'm trying to be for you. His hands were trembling against her face. But wanting you puts you in danger, and I don't know if I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway. Delilah felt tears slip down her cheeks. What if I want to be kept? His breath hitched. Delilah, I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid. You make me feel safe. You make Cameron happy. And yes, there's danger, but there's danger everywhere. She covered his hands with hers. At least with you, I know someone is fighting to protect us. At least with you, I don't have to do it alone anymore. You could die. Cameron could die. Because of me. Or we could live. Really live, not just survive. With you. She pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. I'm choosing to stay, Hyuk-jin. I'm choosing you. Let me. The conflict in his expression was painful to witness. Delilah could see him warring with himself, weighing her safety against his desire to keep them close. Finally, he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. If anything happens to you or Cameron because of me, I'll never forgive myself. Then don't let anything happen. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling the rapid beat of his heart against her cheek. Fight for us. Win. And then come home to us. I will. The promise was fierce, unbreakable. I swear to you I'll end this threat and keep you safe. Both of you. One of the other men cleared his throat, speaking urgently in Korean. Hyuk-jin responded without releasing Delilah, his arms still locked around her. They're ready to move you, he said quietly. There's a safe house in Westchester. High security, armed guards, everything you need. Cameron can continue his schoolwork remotely for a few days. What about you? I'll be handling Victor Kane. His voice hardened. By the end of the week, he won't be a problem anymore. Hyuk-jin, don't ask me not to do this. Don't ask me to show mercy to someone who threatened you and Cameron. He pulled back to look at her, and the cold fury in his eyes was terrifying. This is who I am, Delilah. This is the world I live in. If you're choosing me, you need to understand that. She did understand, and God help her, she didn't care. This man had shown her and her son more care and protection than anyone else in years. If that came with darkness, with danger, with difficult truths about how he handled threats, she could live with that. Just come back to us, she said. That's all I'm asking. End this threat and come back. I will. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her nose, everything but her lips, as if kissing her mouth would seal something he wasn't ready to seal yet. I promise you, I will. The next hour was a whirlwind of packing, security briefings, and saying goodbye to Ji-in. Cameron was confused and scared, but tried to be brave, holding tight to his mother's hand as they were ushered into an armored SUV. As they pulled away from the penthouse, Delilah looked back to see Hyuk-jin standing at the window of his office, watching them leave. Even from this distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the determination in his stance. He was going to war for them, and somehow she knew he would win. He had to, because the alternative, losing him now, after everything, was unthinkable. The safe house was beautiful, a sprawling estate with manicured lawns and enough security to make Fort Knox jealous. But to Delilah, it felt like a gilded cage. 3 days passed with no word from Hyuk-jin. Won-bin assured her everything was proceeding according to plan, but the lack of communication was eating her alive. Cameron sensed her worry, becoming clingy and quiet. At night, he'd crawl into her bed, seeking comfort they both needed. On the 4th morning, Won-bin's phone rang. He stepped away to answer it, and when he returned, his expression was grim. There's been a development, he said carefully. Victor Kane made a move last night. There was a confrontation. Delilah's heart stopped. Is Hyuk-jin... He's alive. He's fine. But... Won-bin hesitated. Kane is dead. Hyuk-jin handled it personally. The room swam. Delilah sat down heavily on the couch, processing this information. Hyuk-jin had killed for them, had ended a life to keep them safe. He wants to see you, Won-bin continued. He's at the penthouse. I can take you there now if you're willing. Mom. Cameron appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Is Mr. Hyuk okay? He's fine, sweetheart. He wants to see us. Can we go? Please. Delilah looked at her son's hopeful face, then back at Wonbin's patient expression. Whatever had happened, whatever Hyuk-jin had done, she needed to see him, to make sure he was really okay, to understand what this meant for all of them. "Yes," she said, "let's go." The penthouse was eerily quiet when they arrived. Wonbin led them straight to Hyuk-jin's private quarters, a section of the residence Delilah had never entered before. He was standing on the balcony, his back to them, still wearing the clothes from, what? A battle? A murder? The white dress shirt was stained with something dark that might have been blood, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled. "Wait here," Delilah told Cameron softly. "Let me talk to him first." She stepped out onto the balcony, and Hyuk-jin turned at the sound. His face was a mask of exhaustion and something darker. Guilt, perhaps, or regret. "You came," he said hoarsely. "Of course I came." She moved closer, searching his face for injuries. There was a bruise forming along his jaw, a cut on his lip, but otherwise he seemed physically unharmed. Wonbin said, "I killed him." The words were flat, emotionless. "Victor Kane, I shot him myself. He's gone and the threat is over and my hands are covered in blood." He held them up as if she could see the stains. "This is who I am, Delilah. This is what I do. And I did it for you, for Cameron. But that doesn't make it noble or heroic. It makes it murder." Delilah reached out slowly, taking his hands in hers. They were warm and solid and shaking slightly. "You did it to protect us. Does that make it better? I don't know. But I know you're not a monster. I know you've shown more care and kindness to my son and me than most so-called good people ever have." She squeezed his hands. "I know that Cameron is inside right now, worried about you, waiting to make sure you're okay. And I know that I—" She stopped, the words catching in her throat. "You what?" His voice was raw, desperate. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you for protecting us, for seeing us, for giving Cameron a male role model who treats him with respect and teaches him to be strong but gentle, for making me feel safe for the first time in years." Tears streamed down her face. "I love you, and I don't care what you had to do to keep us safe. I'm just grateful you came back to us." Hyuk-jin made a broken sound and pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "I don't deserve you. Don't deserve either of you. Maybe not, but you have us anyway." She pulled back to cup his face in her hands. "You have us, Hyuk-jin, if you want us. I want you." The confession was fierce and immediate. "God, I want you both so much it terrifies me. I want Cameron's chess lessons and your smile in the morning and the chance to be something more than what I've always been. I want—" "Mr. Hyuk," Cameron's small voice interrupted from the doorway. "Are you okay?" Hyuk-jin turned, and Delilah saw his expression transform. The guilt and darkness melted away, replaced by something warm and tender, as Cameron ran across the balcony and threw his arms around Hyuk-jin's waist. "I was so worried," Cameron said, his voice muffled against Hyuk-jin's shirt. "Wonbin said there was trouble. I thought maybe you got hurt." "I'm fine, Cameron. I promised I'd come back, didn't I?" Hyuk-jin crouched down, bringing himself eye level with the boy. "And I always keep my promises to you. Are we safe now? Can we go home? You're safe. The bad man won't bother you or your mom anymore." Hyuk-jin glanced up at Delilah, something vulnerable in his expression. "And about going home, I was hoping you might consider staying here, with me, both of you." Cameron's eyes went wide. "Like, living here? In the big house?" "Yes. If your mom agrees, you'd have your own room, of course, and we could play chess every day. And I could teach you more Korean, and—" He trailed off, looking uncertain for the first time since Delilah had met him. "And I could try to be the kind of man you both deserve." "You already are," Delilah said softly. Cameron looked between them, his young face serious. "Would you be like my new dad?" The question hung in the air. Hyuk-jin's expression cracked with emotion, and Delilah saw his eyes glisten with unshed tears. "I would never try to replace your father," Hyuk-jin said carefully. "He was your mom's husband and she loved him, but I would be honored to be someone you could count on, someone who protects you and teaches you and cares about you, if that's okay with you." Cameron threw his arms around Hyuk-jin's neck again. "That's very okay with me." Over her son's shoulder, Hyuk-jin's eyes found Delilah's. The question in them was clear. "Is this okay with you?" She answered by crossing the balcony and wrapping her arms around both of them, creating a circle of three people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it. Yes to staying. Yes to building something new. Yes to you." Hyuk-jin's arm came around her waist, holding her and Cameron both, and for the first time since she'd known him, Delilah saw him smile. Really smile. Unguarded and genuine and full of hope. "I love you," he said quietly. "Both of you. And I swear I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of this gift you're giving me." "You already are," Delilah repeated, and this time she meant it with every fiber of her being. Later, after Cameron had fallen asleep on the couch inside, exhausted from excitement and relief, Hyuk-jin and Delilah stood together on the balcony, watching the sun set over Manhattan. "I never thought I'd have this," Hyuk-jin said quietly. "A family. Someone to come home to. Something worth fighting for beyond power and territory. And now you do." Delilah leaned into his side, feeling his arm wrap securely around her waist. "Now I do." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I know this won't be easy. My world is dangerous. There will be threats, complications, people who try to use you against me. Then we'll face them together." She turned in his arms to look up at him. "You're not alone anymore, Hyuk-jin. And neither am I. We're a team now. A family. A family," he repeated, testing the word. Then he smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "I like the sound of that." He leaned down, and finally his lips met hers in a kiss that was tender and fierce and full of promise. A kiss that tasted like new beginnings and second chances, and the possibility of happiness neither of them had expected to find. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Delilah rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what? For noticing me. For seeing my pain when I was trying to hide it. For caring when you didn't have to. For protecting us. For giving Cameron a role model and giving me everything." His arms tightened around her. "You gave me more than I gave you, Delilah. You gave me a reason to be better. A reason to want more than just power and fear. You gave me hope." They stood there as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, two people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to build something bright together. Inside, Cameron stirred in his sleep, safe and protected in a home that was truly becoming theirs, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Delilah felt completely, perfectly at peace. 6 months later, the penthouse had transformed from a cold, imposing space into a real home. Cameron's artwork covered the refrigerator. His chess trophies lined the shelves in the study. Delilah's touches were everywhere, fresh flowers on the tables, photos of the three of them on the walls, warmth and life in rooms that had once been sterile showcases. Delilah had stopped working as a maid after the first month. Hyuk-jin had insisted, and for once she'd let herself be taken care of. She'd enrolled in online business courses, finally pursuing the degree she'd abandoned after her first husband's death. Cameron was thriving in his new private school, making friends and excelling in his classes. And Hyuk-jin was different, still powerful, still commanding respect in his world, but gentler at home, more open, more willing to show vulnerability with the two people who'd proven they wouldn't use it against him. "Checkmate," Cameron announced triumphantly from the chessboard in the study. Hyuk-jin studied the board, then looked up at the boy with genuine pride. "So it is." "Well played, Cameron. You've been practicing." "You taught me well." Cameron beamed. "Does this mean I finally beat you for real?" "It does. I'm very proud of you." "Can I call you Dad yet?" The question stopped Hyuk-jin mid-reach for a chess piece. Delilah, who'd been reading on the couch nearby, looked up with wide eyes. It was a conversation they'd been dancing around for months. Cameron had been calling Hyuk-jin by his first name, but the longing for something more had been obvious in every interaction. "Cameron," Delilah started gently. "We talked about this. I know. I know he's not my real dad. I know my real dad died and he was a good man and Mom loved him." Cameron's voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes were hopeful as he looked at Hyuk-jin. "But you're here now, and you take care of us, and you teach me stuff. And you love Mom, I can tell even though you're weird about saying it in front of me, and I think you love me too. So can't you be my dad? Like, my dad now?" Hyuk-jin's composure finally cracked. Delilah saw tears gather in his eyes as he pulled Cameron into a fierce hug. "I would be honored," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "So honored, Cameron, if your mom agrees." "Mom?" Cameron looked at her hopefully. Delilah's own tears were flowing freely now. "Of course I agree. Of course." "Then yes," Hyuk-jin said, pulling back to look at Cameron. "Yes, you can call me Dad, and I promise I'll do everything I can to be worthy of that title." Cameron launched himself at Hyuk-jin again, this time saying the word they'd all been waiting for. "Thanks, Dad." Later that night, after Cameron was asleep in his room, Delilah and Hyuk-jin stood together in the master bedroom that had become theirs. "Are you sure about this?" Hyuk-jin asked, pulling her into his arms. "Letting him call me that? It's a big step. I'm sure he loves you and you love him." She reached up to touch the Korean script tattoo on his neck. She'd learned it was his younger brother's name, someone he'd lost to gang violence years ago. "You've been his father in all the ways that matter for months now. It's time to make it official. And you?" His hands settled on her waist. "Are you happy, Delilah? Truly happy?" She smiled up at him, this dangerous, powerful man who played chess with her son, and looked at her like she hung the moon. "Happier than I ever thought I'd be. You gave us everything, Hyuk-jin. Safety, home, love, a family. You gave me those things," he corrected. "I was just existing before you, surviving. But you and Cameron, you made me want to live, to be better, to have something worth protecting beyond just power and territory." He kissed her then, deep and tender, and full of the love he'd finally learned to express. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "I never expected this," Delilah admitted. "When I took that job as your maid, I was just trying to survive, to keep Cameron safe and fed and in school. I never imagined I'd find this." "Neither did I. But I'm glad you walked into my life, Delilah Morgan. I'm glad I noticed when you flinched in pain. I'm glad I was selfish enough to want to keep you." His forehead rested against hers. "I'm glad I get to keep you both." "Forever," she promised. "Forever," he agreed. Through the walls, they could hear Cameron's soft snores, safe and content in his room. Beyond the windows, Manhattan glittered like a promise. And in this room, in this moment, two people who'd each thought they were beyond saving had found salvation in each other. The crime boss and the maid, the powerful and the vulnerable, the dangerous and the brave. Together they'd built something beautiful from the ashes of their separate pains. A family, a home, a love that defied every odd and every expectation. And as Hyuk-jin pulled Delilah closer, whispering promises against her skin, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. They both were.